Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Benji Bruce with SpeakingLifestyle.com, and in this video, I want to talk about something that I call invisible promotion. And invisible promotion is basically how most speakers get hired. Now, I remember that I used to look at other motivational speakers' websites, and I would basically wonder who they were and how they were getting on stages. I used to wonder all this stuff. I mean, especially if I would look at their website and I knew they were getting on stages, but I kind of figured oh man, their website kind of sucks, but still I know they're getting on stages. And I would study all these other speakers and I would see how they're marketing themselves. I'd look at their videos, all kinds of stuff. And I would ask the question of how are these guys getting speaking gigs? And I feel like I should have been getting more gigs and charging more, but it just wasn't happening. So I studied these guys like crazy. I mean, the problem was that no matter how hard I looked at these guys and no matter how hard I looked at their websites and how hard I tried to study them, there was essentially one big problem. The problem is that the way most speakers get hired is invisible to the outside world. And unless you're actually working with that speaker and you know how they're running their business, you can't really reverse engineer how they're actually getting hired and how they're really running their business. If you go to another speaker's website like Tony Robbins or John Maxwell or Brian Tracy, then maybe you think their website is good or not, or maybe you think it sucks, maybe you think it's great. But the fact is they're still getting paid top dollar to speak on stages. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what they're doing differently than other speakers. And when you realize the difference, you'll kind of have this aha moment. It's essentially the same moment that I had, which allowed me to get more speaking gigs for higher prices. So the first thing you have to understand is this: the things you do to start your business and the things you do to run your business are two completely different things. A lot of speakers who look at other speakers to let's say see what they're doing and try to reverse engineer it, they're doing it all wrong. They're looking at other speakers who already have a speaking business, and they're looking to see what these speakers are doing, and they're trying to copy it. So they're looking at others, they're basically trying to copy what they're doing. The problem is that the speaker who's just starting out, he can't copy the speaker who's already established. Let's say that Tony Robbins wants to speak at a huge conference like the CES event in Las Vegas, that the CES event that attracts all kinds of top business people. All Tony Robbins has to do is just contact the person in charge and just ask to be a speaker at the event. That's all he has to do. And what's going to happen? Well, he has a 90% chance that they're actually going to say yes. But what if you're a new speaker and you have the contact information of the people at CES and you give them a call? What do you think would happen if you just called them and asked to speak at the event? Well, you'd have a 0.0001% chance of speaking at their event. That's because you're not established. So even though you copied Tony Robbins' exact tactic to speak on stage, you still won't get the same result, because he's in a different place than a beginning speaker or anyone really below him, to be honest. That's one of the biggest things that I see speakers doing wrong. And it was something that I did wrong for the longest time too. I would look at these speakers who was speaking on all these stages, and I was trying to copy what they were doing, but I wasn't getting the right results. And what made it worse is that it's you hear from these speakers, and they say that all you need is their blueprint, and then you can get the same results as them. And at the same time, it makes sense. You think okay, well, if they made $100 million in their speaking business, then all I need is their blueprint and I'll just copy them and I'll make $100 million. It makes sense. But what speakers don't realize is that the things they have to do to start and grow their business are completely different than the things they have to do to run their speaking business. The speaker who's making $1 billion is running his speaking business. He can afford to hire all kinds of speakers or all kinds of people to do things for him and train them and all that stuff. He has the marketing materials, he has the video footage, the website, the network, he has everything. But the speaker who's just starting out, he doesn't have the website, he doesn't have the network, he doesn't have the video footage. And that means the things he's going to be doing is completely different when he's actually engaging and building his speaking business. On top of that, the opportunities available to every person is very different. When I coach someone, I figure out how to get them to build their speaking business as fast as possible by focusing them on opportunities that only they can take advantage of. I mean, if someone is best friends with Bill Gates, then, I mean, you're damn right I'm going to tell them to use that contact to grow their speaking business. I mean, if someone has a talent like juggling in their arsenal as a speaker, then of course I'll tell them to use that to get publicity and grow their speaking business. So it's important that you realize the difference between building your speaking business and running it, because the things you're doing every single day are going to be very different. The way most speakers get booked is through what I call invisible promotion. Invisible promotion, it's essentially like an iceberg. Think of like an iceberg. People can only see a small portion of what you're doing, but the real profits, they come from what people don't see and can't see because they're just not in your business. Most speakers like Les Brown, John Maxwell, and others, they get booked off referrals. I've gotten to a point where I built what I call a loop system that kind of allows me to get multiple gigs just based on one gig. And so essentially when I get one gig, I get several spin-off gigs and referral gigs from that. And that's essentially how most speakers get hired, especially when you don't leave it to accident and you know how to do it. But if you're just starting your speaking business, then you can't depend on word of mouth to begin with, because there's essentially no word of mouth in the first place. In the beginning, you might be doing things like some internet marketing techniques and using other lead generations, which we talk about in the Speak Pro Academy, but you're going to be doing several different things in the very beginning. Let me give you an example of invisible promotion and what really happens in like the speaking industry. So I'm going to give you an example of how there are things that are happening that you can't see unless you really are on the inside. So let's say that you're a speaker and let's say you want to do the seminar market. You want to be a seminar speaker, sell products on stage, things like that, or do joint ventures with other speakers, that type of stuff, because maybe you heard about the stories of how these speakers are making millions selling products. So first, very few speakers are actually making millions in the seminar industry. Very, very few. So that's what they don't tell you. Second, the way it works is that if you have a product for sale, if you want to sell a product, then you have to obviously give at least 50% of your sales to the promoter, to the person in charge of the event. So if you sell $20,000 worth of product, your take is $10,000. On top of that, they have to, you have to pay for your flight, the hotel, all the expenses, plus the time it takes to fly out there, speak, ship the products, all that sort of stuff. Then there's always the refunds that you're going to pay attention to, which maybe like 30% of the people, they have buyer's remorse, and then they refund the product. So the amount you make, it's not even 10 grand. It's a lot lower than the 10 grand. But what happens is the second you actually ask a speaker, well, how much did you make selling the products? What they're going to tell you, what they don't tell you is that how much actually went to their pocket. They don't tell you, oh, I came home with 5 grand. They don't tell you that. What they say is, oh, we just did $50,000 in sales. And you think like, damn, $50,000 in 60 minutes or something? I mean, that's what you think. But what they don't tell you is that they're lucky to walk away with just a few grand, and they've wasted a lot of time actually flying out there, things like that. Another example from the corporate keynote speaking is actually when someone asked me how I book my gigs, because he wanted to do the same thing. And he said like, hey, how do you book all your gigs? I essentially want to copy you. He realized that I didn't have a book, because a lot of times you hear that, oh, you need a book to get on stages, and I wasn't making blog posts. I wasn't doing any of that stuff, but I was still getting booked on stages by these top-notch companies, and he wanted to know what I was doing. So I asked him how many gigs he has lined up, and he said none. Which is obviously why he wanted to do what I was doing. So, I mean, makes sense. But what he didn't realize is that what I'm doing is actually marketing myself at the gig itself. So he can only do what I do if he actually has a gig to begin with. When someone hires me for an event, I do certain things on stage that actually increase the likelihood that someone's going to hire me for their other events. Then I grab testimonial videos in a certain way. Like, I don't just grab them. I do it in a certain way to get people to give me information about their event. And then I follow up in a certain way to get hired on that event. So even when I told the speaker exactly what I do, what I say, he couldn't duplicate it. The question that he should have asked was, how could he build his speaking business? So from now on, don't look at other speakers and try to copy their speaking business. I mean, yes, there are marketing techniques that you need to learn to build your speaking business, but your situation is different from another speaker's situation. Some speakers build their speaking business by writing a best-selling book, and their speaking business just explodes. That's how some people do it. But then there are millions of other speakers out there who have books, and they're struggling to get a gig just for $1,000. So their situation is different. So you have to look at where you are, and you have to figure out things that will get you to where you want to be. Most speakers have an invisible promotion method that you're not seeing, and that you'll never be able to see because you don't have access to how they're really running their business. So figure out what top activities will build your speaking business, and then you only want to do those things.